It's Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And today we've got a lovely, great treat for you, a fantastic lady, the wonderful Michele Katz. Michele, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So Michele has four kids, and two of your kids are adopted, right?
That's right.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
And so she also is the founder of the Plus One Adoption Foundation. We'll kind of get onto that at the end. But yeah, 4 kids. We've got four furry kids, right? We've got two pigs and 2 Labradors. So we've got 4 kids. So and our logistics to us can seem a little bit tricky. But I'm sure that they completely pale into all insignificance with 4 kids and running a foundation, and you've got a legal career as well, right?
I do, but that doesn't negate the very specialness of the 4-legged children. We have 2.
Right.
We have 2 little dogs. And one's a puppy that we've had for 2 weeks only. So we're working on that newborn situation.
Right.
So yeah, but it is, I hear what you're saying. Yeah. It's a full life, full load. Yeah.
The sense that I get, because I speak to, I don't know, it's probably 70-80% of the people that I speak to for the podcast, before the podcast, after the podcast, are from the US. Maybe 20% are from the UK and Canada and other places. It never see the cultural differences. One of the biggest cultural differences is how much you guys do, like, mom, foundation, and legal. So it's like this doesn't happen. This isn't as common in the UK. So I do take my hat off to you for juggling all those logistics. But anyway, let's get down to tax. So tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure. So I have 2 girls and 2 boys. My eldest and my youngest are the 2 that are adopted from Colombia. So we did 2 international adoptions. My eldest, who is now already 16 years old, she was an infant. And that was back in 2005. She was born, and we got the call in the beginning of 2006. And within 2 weeks, we were on a plane flying down to Bogota with a book entitled The First 12 Months for Dummies. Yep. Mm-hmm. So, though we were crash course parents, I ended up carrying my next 2 kids. They are boys, and they're now 12 and 10. And I still were yearning to kind of bookend the family with another girl. I just always kind of had envisioned that. And we had a really beautiful experience with our first adoption. We had tried to adopt throughout the years, but then due to pregnancies, we kept getting deferred, which is not uncommon. And so then we tried again. This time we decided we wanted to adopt an older child, but we did really hold in high regard the adoption system in Colombia. It's kind of like you start you do a process and it, right? It's comfortable to you, even though there are changes over the years. And so then we got a call, and we went down again to Colombia. This time we didn't take any of those type of books. I mean, we felt pretty well versed after parenting for so long. And that was just December of 2019. Right. So if we can take everybody back, right? This is pre-pandemic, right? We're at the end of the year. It's holiday time. The first adoption back in 2006 was took much longer from the standpoint of the processing, because there was a strike. So I was down there for 9 weeks. Imagine, my parenting alone, because my husband had gone back to work before the strike happened. Then a few days later, After he leaves, there's a strike, right? It was tough. This time we brought the whole family down. I mean, it was all of us, and we were in and out in 2 weeks with our beautiful 8-year-old daughter at the time.
Yeah.
Now she's 10. And, everybody's, thriving. It's a lot, it is a lot of work, the interpersonal relationships you're working on between siblings, between parents, between the other, let's call veteran children, right, that have been with us already, and their adjustment period and everything. Pandemic actually kind of, I think, enhanced that. We got to spend a lot of time together, right? For some of us, we say for better or for worse, right? But I think in the end, it was a good thing, and it accelerated the bonding.
Yeah. So you mentioned obviously my favorite word, thriving. What does thriving adoptees mean to you, Michele?
When I think of a thriving adoptee, I think of my eldest. Not to negate my youngest, it's just she's newer on the scene, and she is still a kid, right? My 16-year-old, though, is developing into and has developed into her own person. And she's smart and beautiful and independent. And when she has questions, she asks, she takes things in stride. I can tell you a few years ago, she was just an adolescent. And out of the blue, I wasn't provoked by anything I said to my knowledge. I was in her room, we were hanging out, and she goes, "Mom, I'm really cool with being adopted." I'm like, okay. Like that age is can be a very angsty age, that 11, 12. And when she said that to me, I really was like so warmed by that. It kind of, to me, meant she felt comfortable in her skin. She felt comfortable with family, her knowledge base. We've always tried to answer any questions she's ever had. And we're open. It's not an open adoption because that's not the process we went through. That's not an option. But we have an open relationship about the topic, and we always have. We even have this picture book that her birth mother put together, and it's beautiful. I mean, this is like something I've never seen. And we are part of a greater adoptive community. And anytime she wanted it growing up, she, we'd say, "Here you go." She, because she was a kid that tore through books, we never let her keep it in her room. But like when she was done with it, she'd return it to us. We'd put it, she knew exactly where it was, and she could grab it, at any time, but had to return it for its preservation because it was so important. But she seems just so, she takes being adopted as something special about her, and nothing negative. It's like more people loved her, not less.
Yeah. A question popped into my head, and I hope it's an okay question to ask.
Sure.
So, and it's a bit devil's advocate-y, right? So it's devil's advocate.
Well, I am an attorney.
Yeah.
So I'm a litigator by trade. So feel free. Let's do this.
I should just ask it and fire away. So is there a part of you that thinks that she said, because your daughter said, "I'm cool with being adopted." Is there a part of you that thinks that maybe at some stage she hasn't been?
Yeah, I would think that she's probably had those thoughts in her head. I don't see that as a negative thing. I think it's a very natural thing. I think it's important, as one is developing into their own sense of self, right? To wonder. And I mean, I don't form her thoughts for her. I just merely answer the questions asked, Your Honor. And right. And I think she came to it probably through her own thought process, as well as kind of looking around. Internet is a big wide world. Who knows what else she's been.
Yeah.
I mean, to some degree we know, but we don't if it's public, right? She's, she may have done her own research, and if she did, kudos to her for doing that. I will say that as a family, we attend a camp every summer called La Semana. It takes place in Minnesota. It's a week long, hence the name La Semana, and it is a Latin heritage camp. It is mostly adopted children from Spanish-speaking countries, and their siblings. Okay, whether they're biological to the parents or whoever, or from other countries, also adopted. These families come to this camp every summer. And usually there's a parent who volunteer for the week, right? So you get to know the other parents and see the kids. And, that's 1 week out of the year where these kids are not the minority. And even if they're just doing regular things like playing soccer, archery, like camp, climbing walls, camp things, there's still something very special about the bonds that they have formed over the years. And my kids, whether adopted or not, have been a part of this camp. And I do think that is also, potentially a factor in this comfort that she has.
Yeah. There's another camp. It's called Heritage Camps. We had a lady on the founder there. Sorry, I interviewed it ages ago and I've forgotten her name. That's really embarrassing. I get really embarrassed about forgetting people's name. But I'll put a link in. I'll put a link in the show notes to the heritage camps, so people can learn more about this stuff, because I think it sounds like it's been a great experience for your family. So, do you think? You figure that maybe it's interesting. As soon as you said that she's had her questions, and that's natural, the thing that popped into my head was the fact that I think my sister, well, I know that from one thing that my sister said to me, when I was about 10, she would have been about 8. She was adopted as well, adopted from a different biological family. She had the questions and I didn't. So you get the feeling that maybe she had some questions. She's gone through some stuff, but she's come out the other side, and she's come out the side kind of her own accord, doing her own research. She has been secure enough in the environment that you've created for her to kind of explore that. She hasn't gone off the rails doing that. I'm not sure really what the question is here. I think what I'm doing actually is I'm picking up on it from the listeners, perspective, to so hopefully offering them some hope here, that kids, it's natural for these kids, for us adoptees to have these thoughts. Some will have more than others, and some will work through their stuff, and some will work through their questions and come out of it and be, as you say, cool with being adopted, or as your daughter said, cool with being adopted, and comfortable in their own skin. Because I think that's what we want. We all want to be happy. We all want to be comfortable in our own skin. And if we're parents, we want the same for our kids, no matter what. That's the ultimate aim, isn't it? For them to be comfortable in their own skin. That's more important than any kind of career thing or anything at all. We want kids to be comfortable in their own skin.
Absolutely, whether adopted or not, just as individuals, just as people. Like in some ways, it's like normalizing, right? Just be like, everyone has their different history, right? If you are adopted, your history kind of starts before you. You know what I mean? It's like there's this history before you. And even if you're born into a biological family, right, there's still a history before you. But when you are adopted, because there's a shift in who is ultimately raising you as a child, right? That seems to be quite significant, not to everyone, but to some it is. And for my daughter, she just makes it seem like when she said, you know, I'm cool with this, I'm good with it, whatever her exact words were, you know, it was, you know, that she had come to a place, even if she wasn't previously, where she had achieved that goal. And pretty early, if you ask me.
Yeah. And you said something else. You said something else is that, you know, it seemed to me I've heard this phrase helicopter parenting, right? It's when you're watching over them, everything they're doing. And you said something about, you know, you're not responsible for her thoughts or something like that. And there was a kind of an empowerment thing. What it spoke to me was a realization of your role as a mom, and a kind of an empowerment piece. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, from the standpoint, I'm not telling her what to think. We've had discussions on many other topics unrelated to adoption when she asked me a question, and I may ask, well, what's your thought on it? Here are some possible, you know, here's the possible theories on this, that, and the other thing, right? You know, maybe religion, politics, those sort of things.
I thought you were going to talk about boys then for some reason.
Well, no, don't. Yeah, well, yeah, that's a topic too, and that's become an increasingly discussed topic, right? She's in high school now, but and of course, even prior, you know, note to parents: if you're waiting till high school to have those talks, you're a little late. I mean, just saying, the internet and social media and all that jazz kind of propels our kids a little quicker with things and visuals and stuff than we had, of course. So, but yeah, I think empowerment, if you're feeding, I mean, I can express my opinion with her, then I respect her opinion. I think that's what comes through maybe on her side. It's hard, you know, from this empowerment piece, maybe when I say, what do you think? When you actually ask a child, maybe they're not used to being asked what they think. I mean, I don't know if, you know, maybe not, but that's pretty normal in our household. It's not just with her. All of our kids, to some degree, we might ask them back, well, what do you think? Do you think that was a good idea? Like in the case of the middle boys, I feel like I asked that question often enough.
Yeah. My mum still asks me that question. I'm 55. And thank you, because I must have about 20 years on you. So thank you for grouping me in with your generation earlier on. The other kids. So you talked about your going back down to Bogota in December 19, you said? December 19, yeah. Mm-hmm. And you talked about being well versed, and you hadn't got the book with you. So what wasn't in the book?
Well, I mean, and I get asked kind of, it's similar to that question about, adopting an older child, right? Okay. It carries different nuances. Yes, I didn't have to worry about, carrying diapers and bottles and sleepless nights, like with the older three. But there were certainly things in the book that, would not have been in any of those like development books. She was 8 years old already. There's some not grown up necessarily feelings, not ones that can be articulated, but reactions to things where your eyes might bug out and go, okay, what do we do in this situation? And living in she lived in an orphanage for 2 years before we adopted her. And then she had some time in the orphanage, not for adoption purposes, but for rehabilitation of the family, biological family, prior to that. So you've got a child who you cannot assume is the same developmentally, emotionally, socially, like all of those spheres as the children that had been through those age, been at her age. And all kids are, and that's another thing, is all kids are different anyway. I mean, if you talk to parents perhaps who have multiple kids, they can't believe, whether, biological or not, right? That they can be so different. And so, as was the case, we were discovering while we were in Colombia.
Yeah. So I'm gonna nip back again to the story because I'm trying to crystallize. I'm trying to crystallize and draw out the learnings, right? So if you can, it was obviously a long time ago. Maybe you won't remember, but I'll ask anyway. So you're reading this book on the way down to Bogota 15 years ago, 15 years ago, 16 years ago.
Yeah, 16 years ago.
16 years ago. What wasn't in the book that you subsequently learned?
Oh, with the
eldest.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were applying the equivalent to the new adoption. Yes. Yeah. So we came into our eldest life. She was 4 months old. So clearly we did get to skip the first 4 chapters. Okay. I mean, to some degree, but there were a lot of bullet points, like the markers, the tummy time, those things, they're in there. That's all very relevant.
Sorry, what do you mean? What's tummy time?
So one of the developmental aspects of the child's development, you want to see that when they can lift their head up on their own, right? So they're building the muscles in their neck. That helps with what comes later with the rolling over in both directions and all that. And it's called tummy time. And you put the baby on their tummy, sometimes like a spherical pillow, right? So they're on their tummy and they're forced to kind of lift their head up, and it's like calisthenics for babies. So yeah, I'm really going back in time thinking about this, and that's always, doctors kind of harp on making sure, the pediatrician makes sure they get their tummy time and all that, because the strength is important. And when you're adopting, your child may not have had as much belly time. Okay. So that's something for, adoptive parents to be aware of, unless they're taking the child potentially directly from the hospital, which is obviously the case for some, but for many, it's not. And so you want to so this is what's not in the book, is this kind of like catch up. And it's good to consult the pediatrician, and especially ones, we went to a pediatrician once. Came home, we did in Colombia, but once we came home, we went to one specialized in adopted kids. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a thing. That's a thing. And not that his entire client base was, patient base were adopted kids, but who had a focus and an interest in adopted children. And so the book, of course, is going with kind of the quote unquote normal progression. And if you're adopting, you may want to so even though we adopted in month 4, I still did gloss on month 3, right? To see what, are we missing something, right, from the previous month? Yeah. Wow. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So that's not in the book. Okay. That might be in a different book, but it wasn't in this book. Yeah.
So I'm intrigued. Just how 4. So
I get that a lot. 4. So you have 4 kids.
So, my mum's the eldest of four. She's, what's she now? 82, 83. I should know, shouldn't I? She's born in 30.
No comment.
38. Yeah, she's 83. Yeah, she's 84 this year. So she's the eldest of four. She's the eldest of four daughters. But she has me and my sister. Her next, the 81-year-old, my Auntie Kathleen, has four kids, and I always thought that it was kind of cool having four kids. I thought, and the things, there's more. They look after each other a little bit more. If there's four of them, there's more of a pecking order. There's obviously there's the age difference, and maybe they sort stuff out more. But how does it work in your family?
There's definitely a pecking order. I think that the younger kids definitely, they look up to my eldest. She has more freedoms as the eldest, as far as which we tell her, you have earned this. You have earned this. Good grades, good demeanor, respectful. She's not one of these sass girls. I don't know if like who talk back to their parents. She's deferential, good judgment. This is all through, I mean, it's not 100%. Sometimes we got to have like a talk. Okay. We got to but, and that's important too. We have as a parent, I feel like I'm responsible for taking her down a notch when she's feeling a little bit too confident. I mean, confidence is good, but don't get me wrong, but it doesn't mean arrogant, right? Like there's a difference.
Line,
yeah. And teaching the kids that, the difference, right? But the other kids see that. I think that she's a role model for them. Not to say that they emulate her. I wouldn't mind seeing a little more of that, but but again, they're all their unique personalities, and that's important too. Like we're not raising robots here, so
yeah. And what are the kind of, perhaps back to more adoption specific questions and international issues here and the heritage stuff? What else? Because this adds, as you say, a layer of complexity or another a level to it that I don't understand as somebody adopted from. Well, how far is it from you to Bogota? Like 5,000 miles or something like that? 4,000 miles?
Well, I know it more like it's you got to fly to Miami first, which is 3 hours, and then it's another 3 hours to Bogota. So that's that's how I characterize it.
I'm going to say that that's actually 3,000 miles because I work on a plane going at 500 miles an hour.
Oh, it sounds like a great math problem. Yes.
So so I was adopted from 80 miles away.
Right? Okay. Mm-hmm.
And obviously English speaking rather than Spanish speaking, and so people talk a lot about this adding another layer of complexity. How have you seen that?
Well, I mean, complexity, maybe. I think it's fun. I'm into cultural. I like, I've studied different cultures, and we are a bilingual home, so the kids all know Spanish, and
all four kids, yeah.
All four kids. Yeah. Obviously, our youngest speaks the best. She can run circles around me, but yeah, since I'm not a native speaker, but when we adopted our first child, my husband and I made that decision that we were going to, language and culture is an identity, right? They're linked. And when they're not the same as in the place you're going to live, we thought it beneficial to bring part of that with us home, right?
Yeah. Do lots of people do that? I've not heard that before.
Some. Yeah. Not the majority, but that was something that was important to us.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, are you Colombian? Because they hear us speaking Spanish, or are you, I get like, tú eres Latina? Like sometimes people will ask me, and I'll say, well, our family heritage, it's part of I just say it's a part of our family heritage. I just leave it at that, yeah, because the culture is somewhat integrated, and we have made the decision to integrate it. Not everybody does. Maybe I think my daughters, they all seem to like it. I think it certainly helped when we were going down for the second adoption in December of 2019. The kids felt comfortable being there and able to communicate in another language, and with their new sister who didn't speak a word of English, something, that made it a lot easier, that transition. And I remember I did ask the adoption rep when we were down there, the Colombian liaison. I said, what are you seeing, like, as a third party looking in at us and our, in our chaos? She said, yeah, the language piece it's made a big difference, in her opinion, of the kind of molding together, right? Because we could communicate, we could understand her, for better or for worse. Sometimes she didn't always have a nice thing to say, but but yeah. Sure. So I think language has had an impact, a positive one.
Because my sister lives in Switzerland, and she has 3 kids. And for me, it's really important that, that they can converse with, well, unfortunately, my dad's no longer with us. He died like 5 years ago. But, before he died, the kids are all in, one's 19, the other 2 are in their 20s. That's really important, that communication with the grandparents, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For my sister, for my sister's kids, I thought that was that's something that I think it is. Everything's about communication, and the language must make it easier. So I think that was a really big and important decision, looking back on that.
Yeah, I mean, being able to communicate with your family, I mean, and the people around you, it's critical, right? And from an adoption perspective, I also kept in mind that at 18 years old, their files became theirs. And whatever they decided to do with any kind of searching, it would certainly be a lot easier if they could speak the language. Now, of course, that's not an issue for my youngest, because she's obviously still quite fluent. But for my eldest, that was really important, that she'd be able to communicate if she needed to. I mean, just beyond the importance that people might find of, being able to speak another language, right? I mean, there's kind of like those, just the normal, that's great. If someone can speak another language and communicate, help, whatever, maybe job related, open up opportunities, whatever the case may be. But from a specific adoption perspective, if you're adopting international, and that's not always the case, and that's okay too, right? There's translators. It's a whole, it's a whole huge industry. But it was something that was important to us. It was a decision we made.
Yeah. So what else have you felt that you've kind of learned along the way, and that you're continuing to learn along the way?
To
help your kids thrive.
Quite a bit. So when adopting an older child, if we kind of start there, because that's a very different experience I have found than adopting a newborn. And that is memory, right? So that, with my with my eldest, it was, I could answer her questions. Strangely enough, I mean, I don't have a lot of information. I wasn't provided a lot of information. It was a different circumstance with my youngest. And sometimes she starts talking about things and my ears perk up, like, tell me more, but she otherwise, I don't know what brings it out or what, and it's hard to understand, like what the information coming out is kind of disjointed. Like it's like a part of a story and so I might ask some questions. Oh, tell me about this and tell me about that, but it's still it's different. There's some memory there, but I can't really access it completely.
Because she can't access it completely.
I don't know if it's because she's just not old enough yet to articulate, or she doesn't have a great, like, when you're little, it's like, when we remember things as a child, it's a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
Throughout the years, we may kind of seek, we might kind of fill in the gaps on our own, and she was quite young still, and young, like emotionally, mentally, not on par with an 8-year-old. So there's some emotional things, and it's because she is a sweet-hearted person. It hasn't been it hasn't been, I don't want to say, it hasn't been like scary for her or anything. She seems quite secure in when she talks about it. But like every so often, kind of randomly, she'll start talking about something. And it's mostly actually about her life in the orphanage, actually. That's primarily what it is. Just randomly, she'll start talking about times then, but it's still hard to really to pull out like the clear picture. And sometimes I might ask her, a question, did you ever try this before? Like her first beach experience with us, her first flying a kite with us, her first braids in her hair type of thing, like actually having, putting braids in her hair, because she likes when I French braid her hair. And just like so many things, even though she was 8, are first with us. And so I say this for a few reasons. One is that, I'm trying to give concrete examples to answer your question, but also for anyone who thinks like adopting an older child, it's like you've missed all these things. Which, to be honest, I was okay with missing, like we talked about like the diapers and all that stuff, for my 4th, I'm like, okay, I'm good. There's still so many like mind-boggling first that we don't think about as first. Like we just don't, people talk about like the first step and this and those, they're special. They're special, but there's so many firsts.
Yeah. And so are you cool about, are you like your daughter? Are you cool about that? Are you cool about this?
I love it. I think I'm kind of like a bright-sided person. So I'm like, okay, there's challenges naturally. There's definitely challenges, but I think there's challenges no matter what. Like if you're gonna like life has challenges, like accepting that as a premise, and then kind of working with like these kids bring so much passion, excitement, fun. There's so many things that I do besides work because of them. Like one of my kids, my older boy, he loves to ski. This is like a new thing for him. I would never take a day and just go skiing, but for him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, or ice skating, and I'm in Chicago. Okay. So we have access to these cold weather sports, to be outside, right, in the winter. What would I be doing? I'd probably be working I'd be working, organizing the house, right? I'm doing those things anyway, but the kids, they really lead me to take a break, because otherwise I can be a rather workhorse oriented person, so.
Yeah. And how have how's your youngest, how's her development coming on with 3 older siblings now in the last 2 years?
It's amazing. So at first, because she didn't know their names, right? I mean, it took a little while because their names are a bit unusual. I mean, it's not like typical Maria type names, like from Latin America, right? She called, there was hermana. Yeah. She just called like as if it was her name. Okay. It was hermana, hermano grande, hermano, and hermano pequeño. Okay. And so the development now, clearly she knows their names now, not an issue. And the way in which they interact is very different. They learned how to play well together. It takes some time. So like, for example, my older son, he likes to like rough play. Okay. She likes that. There's a part of her that really likes that. When you put her on a blanket and he's walking around the house, pulling her on a blanket, whereas the way she plays with hermano pequeño, the smaller, he's still older than her, but yeah. the other, my other son, my younger son, is they're more like hide and go seek kind of playmates, right? It's like they have found a different kind of way to play. And so you're seeing this all, because in the pandemic, they're home and they were e-learning and whatnot. So when they take breaks, and especially because it's cold here, right? And if we're not like doing something outside, right? They were just playing in the house. So the way in which they had to learn their preferred methods of play with each other. And that's the bright side, right? Of having, you mentioned like with your mom and your 3 aunts, yeah, right?
That's right. With the 4.
Yeah. With the 4, fighting it happens and stuff. That's, part of it, and working out resolution, hopefully I don't have to be involved, but obviously obviously plenty of times I am. But it's there's kind of these built-in playmates, like play dates. And during the pandemic, that was pretty great to have.
For sure. You talked a little while ago about being part of a wider adoption community. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, so when we flew down in 2006 for our first adoption, we befriended a number of people who were living in the same place we were living in. We were living in a bed and breakfast. It was geared towards adopting families. And they were all
these specializations. Who would have known that?
Who would have known, right?
The pediatrician and the B&B for adoptive parents.
And there were several of these type of hotels. Okay. And your meals are cooked for you. There was a bell that would ring, right, to let you know to come down for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It was included in your daily rate. Incredible. And so everyone's eating at the same time. All the kids are playing. There's even play areas. There was a yard, right? So we are all essentially like one big family for a pretty grand experience in your life. I mean, this is a momentous occasion. You are adding a member to your family forever, right? So this community are the ones that became that they were like our core adoption community. Okay. But it grew because there were a group of families. Some were European. So, we were only in contact through, like social media channels, but to actually see the others in person, we were going to Minnesota. This was the precursor to going to that camp. Yeah. We set out a long weekend. We would drive to Minnesota, which is about a 7-hour drive from Chicago. We would spend the weekend, have a picnic, and hang out together. They started going to this camp, right? They would tell us about the camp. And so then we kind of converted that long weekend into a week-long stay. And that's how we would, get together every year. And some of the kids are now they're aging out as campers, and they're there as like helpers, counselors.
That's brilliant. I mean, it's like so a lot of my sister-in-law, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, they have they have friends that they made through the hospital, when their kids were born. There's a young mum in our village. I guess she's in her 30s. She just had their first child, and she's hanging out with the mums and the kids that were in the hospital, 2 months ago. So it's all these networks where people come together, and it seems to be a great support and a way to learn from one another. What else? What other benefits does this being part of this broader community bring to you and your kids, do you think?
I mean, just like, if we haven't learned, anything in the pandemic, it's like the connections with people and how important that is for your, they enrich your lives. So, having the relationships, they're important. I feel like having those bonding experiences that the kids are having throughout their years stays with them. I mean, I was a camper back when, and I still, we didn't have, like, we had to write letters. So staying in touch wasn't the same, as not nearly as, before even flip phone. None of that existed. Right. So, because all of this, the technology exists, they can keep in touch all year long. Yeah. And I know my eldest, she has a La Semana chat group. Like, so, they can communicate all year round. And these friendships are important and unique, I think, because even though everyone has their own, everyone has their own adoption story. If you're adopted, you have your own adoption story. They're unique to you, but it's still, there's like a common thread, I feel like, that bonds these kids together.
Yeah. And what does the relationship, how does it benefit the adoptive parents?
Well, in a very similar way, because we have chosen to build a family in a unique way. It's even though it's, people talk about it more, so it's a little bit more open as far as a conversation piece, but it's also a shared experience. What was your experience? It's not that different from those that are going through pregnancy and talk about, like, oh, what was your pregnancy experience like? So
that's what's going on for the mum and dad in the village, and for my brother and sister-in-law. Their kids are in their 20s and they're still friends. We were chatting last week about Samantha's eldest. So Samantha's my eldest, my niece, and there's a nephew who's a little bit younger. So they're like, I don't know, 25 and 23, something like that. And they were talking about her best friend from that era, from when she was born, Mikey, and how he's doing and stuff like that. So yeah, this is relationship. This is human. This isn't adoption stuff.
I mean, there's that theme, like the origin, right? Like the origin, but as you spend more time together, I mean, you're building like new experiences together to bond over, funny stories, right? Those kind of things. Maybe some drama, right? That can also bond people also, right? And so the same, when I mentioned that with that first adoption, we were on our first. These families who were on their second and third, they were the ones who taught us how to make a formula bottle. They were the ones who showed us how to do certain things and the tricks of that, and help with those early parenting tips. And now, we're invited to high school graduations. We're still a part of that extended family, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. If I can bring back, you mentioned the bonding word a few times. if I can bring that to the bonding within the 6 of you, or the 8 of you, if you count your furry friends, and the what, 10-week-old puppy, 12-week-old puppy.
Oh no, thankfully no, she's 4 months.
She's 4 months. Okay,
4 months, just
so
like when we had the same age as when we adopted our first.
Oh right, yeah.
4 months.
We've like I think we got our dogs at like 10 weeks old or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so but if we bring it back down to the bonding within the family, within the 6 humans and the 2 canines, what have been the ingredients for that bonding?
Well, you have to, so we eat dinner together almost every night. So dinner time is a time when we come together, at least like Monday through Friday. And as sports have picked up and things, people might be joining late or leaving early to go to certain activities, but we have this kind of core thing going on where dinner is a family thing. Mondays, we've been doing this since, oh gosh, my eldest was quite little. It's called Monday night movie night. It's the only night we eat in front of the TV and we watch a movie. I pick the movie. And so they're usually like 80s, 90s flicks, like the old good stuff, like The Goonies, Splash, like those kind of like really, I mean,
Big.
Well, and the old Ghostbusters, like those kind of movies, right?
You watch Big with Tom Hanks?
Oh, Big. Yes, we saw that one. Yeah, we did. I actually have to keep a list on my phone now, like with check marks, because like it's been years. This has been going years. I mean, for one thing, if they would say like, can I eat dinner in front of the TV? I'd be like, is it Monday? I just ask the question back and that answers it. You know what I mean? Because, and even that is kind of bonding, you know what I mean? And I have to like, be like, pipe down, like the still like movie rules apply, right? Monday night movie rules apply. And then on other nights when we're sitting around the regular, like dining room table, dinner table, we typically would do like rose, thorn, and bud. Do you know that? Where everyone, including the adults at the table, we have to say, what was something good that happened that day? That's your rose. Something bad that happened that day, that's your thorn. And then something you're looking forward to, which is your bud. And so I'm not saying they all love it, but we do it. And some of them, they love. And I have this rose and some of them, let's just keep it to 2 roses today. Okay.
Don't go.
And I mean, I think that it wasn't brought in intentionally as bonding, but that's just the natural effect. And that way everyone has a share of something that, otherwise it's like, how was your day? Fine. Yeah. Right. Yeah, this way you can get a little bit more information too. Yeah.
And what about the kind of the more emotional sides of bonding? Because I can see those practical things being a big thing, but what's your kind of, it seems, because I'm not we don't, I don't know, the dogs bond with us kind of, well, they're unconditional love, aren't they? So it's a bit of a silly question really for but I'm a non-parent, so what's your take on bonding? What's your come from on bonding? I don't even know if that's a question.
Yeah, there's emotion. No, so yeah, I mean, like I've said throughout, I mean, this is not all like hugs and games and all that. I mean, the kids, part of bonding, well, I think as you can fight with your siblings. There's a way in which you can fight, and there's a way in which you cannot fight. Okay. So I will tell you that for my youngest, living in orphanage life, if someone took something from her, she was not getting it back unless she took it back. Okay. And in our household, we had, remember I said we had to like learn how to play. And there's also a learn how to fight. There's kind of like rules within fighting. We don't pinch or bite. This also is with kids who are not adopted as well, like, in kindergarten, but my daughter was not in kindergarten. She was a little bit older, right? And so it's my older kids understanding that there's a certain kind of play that is not okay. Okay. And one is grabbing something and running off. Okay. That's emotional. That was creating a pretty big emotional reaction from my youngest. Okay. Not a positive one. So we had to work on how to play and also how to fight. So
it's like the Geneva Convention. You heard of this, right?
Yeah. Naturally, of course. Yeah. But yeah. So there's
this
like
is the Chicago Convention.
Yeah, it's like
it's the Katz Convention.
Yeah, Katz Convention. It has a nice ring to it.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. So like there's emotion in that, like high emotion in that from all parties, because then you've got everyone coming to you crying. He did this, she did that, right? Yeah, for sure. Good times at the Katz Convention.
Yeah. So I'm conscious of time, and I want to end with a question, which is I sometimes ask it, sometimes I don't, but today it feels like I should. So what's the question that I haven't asked?
Why did I start a foundation related to adoption, and what does it do?
Why did you start a foundation related to adoption, and what does it do?
I'm glad you asked.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So essentially, the experience I had in Colombia in 2019 was very exceptional in showing me that there are a lot of kids out there who do not have a permanent home. And I know plenty of people who want to be parents. How do we make those connections, right? How do we get people who want to be parents knowledge, right, to consider adoption as one of their in their family planning, essentially, right? Just like other options. There's lots of options. I want adoption on that list. Okay. So I created the +1 Adoption Foundation in order to create awareness, because people can come to adoption from all different reasons or not have any particular reason, but that's how they want to grow their family, at least in part. So mine's a hybrid, right? So that's one reason, and that's that's the vision that I have, and that's what we're accomplishing. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary yesterday, in fact, March 16th. And
congratulations, happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm loving this. And the other prong, though, is to financially clear. Pardon? That's clear.
It's clear,
But the other prong is to financially assist families who are seeking adoption, because there are fees associated with adoption in most cases, and in particular post-placement. Okay, so here you go. Here's your child, right? And perhaps they need extra tutoring or PT, physical therapy or occupational therapy or TheraPlay for attachment. There's all these different things that the child might need and may not be covered by insurance, maybe not totally. And tutors, for having help in, certain subjects, we want to assist. And that's what we've started doing. And it's fantastic.
Brilliant. So as always, listeners, there are links in the show notes. So that's underneath the recording to every guest that I have on. I'd encourage you to connect with Michele, have a check out what the foundation's doing. Follow them on Instagram and Facebook. You're on both of those, if I remember correctly.
We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, and we have a website.
Yeah, not on Facebook. Okay, so LinkedIn.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so LinkedIn and Facebook, and check them out on their website. And it's been a delight, and it's been a bit different. I don't know, it feels a bit different to some of the usual interviews that I've had today. Would be perhaps been a little bit more practical. So I think it's good to kind of mix it up again and mix it up. And the conversations, they go where they go, and this one has been a delight. So thank you for sharing so much of your story. And
thank you for having me. Thank you for the invite. Thanks for searching and finding me out and asking me.
Yeah, I do a lot of searching. Thank you very much, listeners, and thank you for finding us, and thank you for tuning into the show. And I listen to podcasts and people say, well, share and subscribe, and do what feels right to you, listeners. Okay, we'll speak to you all again very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.